Hello, everyone, and welcome to our viewers advisory discussion for the movie The Blackcoat's Daughter. If you have been following our viewers advisory discussions, you know that we are particularly focusing on movies produced and distributed by the film distribution company A24. We chose A24 because they are a huge supporter of independent filmmakers, and the films that they back and support usually create a more engaging discussion around the deeper themes of the films. The filmmakers can get a lot more creative and they have a lot more leniency when filming. So I'm going to first introduce myself and then introduce my other panelists. My name is Cinnamon Better, and I work at the Oxon Hill Branch Library.
My name is Jade Campbell, and I work at the Mount Rainier Library.
My name is Bashir Kareem. I'm a librarian at the Fairmont Heights Library.
My name is Rachel Troyanos, and I work at the Bowie Library.
My name is Daniel Hampton, and I work at the Spalding's Library.
My name is Lauren Roots, and I work at the Oxon Hill Branch.
All right, so I just want to thank you all again for joining us and thank my panelists for joining me for this discussion. I want to welcome our three new panelists who are going to offer a different perspective into the movies that we'll be discussing. So we're just going to jump right into it. The first question I have for you guys is, what was the strongest emotion that you felt while watching the film?
Yeah, I was creeped out. I was totally creeped out. But let me backtrack because I watched the movie twice. And in my first viewing of the movie, I wasn't really in the zone, and so
Right.
I was really befuddled, confused, and I thought it was absolutely terrible. But you know, I said, well, let me find out what's going on online. Let's see what the people are saying. So I went to what is it, Rotten Tomatoes, and it was like 70% of the critics thought it was phenomenal.
Right.
But 20% of the audience thought it was phenomenal. So they thought it was trash too. I was thinking to myself, what is going on here? This is crazy. Like, it's split. So then I'm doing some more digging, come across an article on vulture.com, and it breaks it down. And it's like, and I'm like, whoa, like that's what happened in that movie? And then I said, I gotta go back and watch it.
Right.
I gotta go back and watch it. And when I watched it the second time, it was phenomenal. I thought it was a quintessential art house film, you know, in terms of low budget, independent movie that, you know, I remember back in the day, my mom would get something from like Blockbuster, these little gems from Blockbuster, these straight to DVD movies. And it reminded me of that. And so, you know, but that's the power of a good movie critic, is that they act like astronomers or astrophysicists. They help you when you look up and you see the stars. They help you to understand what's happening on the screen. And so, had it not been for those powerful reviews, it would have went right over my head. So I think people either think it's absolutely boring, or they're gonna think it's banging. There's no in between.
There's no in between at all.
Well, I liked it, but I like every film that we watch. And my strongest emotion was like, turn on the lights in the hallway. Like, oh my gosh, why is it so dark and creepy? I just felt very like scared and like trying to figure out who's the threat and who's the one that's being threatened, like who's the prey. So those were my strongest emotions during the film. But yeah, I loved it, and I think I read that same Vulture article afterwards. So yeah, I think I read that same Vulture article because I just wanted to make sure that what I thought had happened actually happened. But I really liked it per usual.
Yeah, I felt a strong sense of suspense. It was like sitting there for the first half hour waiting for something to happen, and I'm just like, okay, something's happening now, but nothing happened. Something's happening next, nothing happened. But then when the climax actually came, now I'm on the edge of my seat, kind of regretting being alone, because I'm like, oh, okay. I'm looking around
Me
me
and my
now, making
cat.
sure, making sure nothing is popping up at me. But I won't lie, it was a little confusing in the beginning, just trying to connect the pieces. But they did a pretty decent job at, connecting them at the end, kind of not leaving you with the cliff, not leaving you with the cliffhanger or anything like that.
So this was my film choice. So I loved it, and I was kind of like, yeah, let's do this one. When I was watching the film for the first time, I actually felt a lot of anxiety, and I think that's not just because of the unsettling quality of the subject matter, but also in the choice of colors, and even more specifically, the choice of music.
Yes.
So for me, it felt very similar in quality to the music from the show Devs. If any of you guys have seen Devs,
I haven't.
It's got this very jarring quality, and it kind of overwhelms the scene sometimes, and it makes you feel really claustrophobic, where I kind of felt the same sense here. I also think that the shift in time kind of keeps your senses heightened because you're constantly trying to figure out what's happening and what are these characters' motives and what new things you can learn just kind of based on those narratives switching. So yeah.
I agree.
Good pick.
Thanks. I'm so glad you guys liked it.
Yeah, I love it.
I was so worried. I was like, I don't know who else is going to enjoy this one but me.
No, amazing.
It picked up.
Yeah, I think for me in the beginning, I was largely confused. And because I was confused, I feel like that's where the anxiety for me came in, because I was trying to figure out what was going on. I feel like I was kind of just plopped into the middle of a scenario, trying to figure out what was going on, while also this ominous music is playing in the background.
Right.
And it's like, I feel like I had to catch up in a way and connect the dots. I felt like I was kind of thrown into like a psychological mystery horror movie where I had to almost kind of figure out what was going on, what was happening. So yeah, that's kind of where my anxiety played. And I had to rewind and watch a few of the scenes a couple of times just because I wasn't quite sure if I had missed something or not.
Right.
So yeah.
That's my favorite part of the A24 movies. They make you have such strong emotions. Like I love it. It's like an experience every movie that you watch. So good.
Yeah, with this film particularly, I was confused, like Daniel said he was, because the opening scene is kind of like disorienting a little because it's very dark. They don't give you any real background as to why they're standing outside. Like it's confusing. And then I was bored because I'm like, what is going on? There's no real plot. Like, what is happening? There's nothing popping off. This is supposed to be a horror movie, and I haven't jumped at like once. So like, what's happening?
Yeah.
But then like as Jade commented, like it picks up, and now I'm like intrigued and impressed because I'm just like, wow, this was so well done, and it makes you want to go back and watch it a second time, even if you liked it like I did personally the first time. Once I got to the end of it, I was like, wow, there's so many things I missed out on because I wasn't necessarily really focused on it that could have like helped tie the ending together even more. So I think I'm going to go back and rewatch it a second time now that I've watched it for the first watch, got it out the way. But now that you're, more informed, Rachel and Bashir, you read the article and now you have all these differing opinions and you can go in with multiple perspectives and pick apart all the different scenes. So I think I'm going to watch it again, but I was very, very impressed at the end.
Yeah. I want to look for like the creepy devil things that I know she's doing throughout.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely like little hints of devil.
Right.
Like her little sneaky smiles. Yeah, like why are you
yeah.
smiling like that?
Oh my goodness. So speaking about that, sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
It's so interesting to me that you were bored. Like from the start, I was like, what is this? Like I was not bored at all.
I was kind of bored in the beginning too.
Yeah, like some movies don't like capture you in the beginning, and you're like on your phone, glancing up every once in a while, like, oh, it hasn't picked up yet. But then that one scene, you're just like, hold on, what's going on? Let me rewind. Let me go back. Did I miss something? And I feel like that was what the film did to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I honestly assumed who was going to be the protagonist, and I was completely wrong. And I was
Right.
very disappointed.
It was definitely one of those, the villain you think it is, and then like the actual villain. I was like, oh, okay, that's where we're going with that.
Right. So Rachel touched on it a bit with the creepy smile that Kat had, and Daniel and Lauren also talked about the anxiety they felt about watching the film. So my question is, what was one thing that like deeply disturbed you about the film, like a scene or maybe a line or some type of, the music? What disturbed you enough to be like, oh my gosh, this is about to take a crazy turn?
The boiler room scene for me, when she's like,
Oh.
like, no, absolutely not. I like hate devil stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I hate devil stuff, and she was just doing the most devilly stuff in the boiler room. Like, I was like, absolutely not. But I mean, I still love the movie anyway. But it was like, I have goosebumps right now thinking about it.
When she played that creepy song on the piano,
I love that
in front of everybody. It was a beautiful song.
I love that. I played it twice.
The words,
this
the
guy's
lyrics.
a beautiful voice.
Yeah, she has a beautiful voice.
The lyrics were so dark.
Right.
Yeah, and I think they end up doing that same song later on in the movie, but without the lyrics, with just like the sounds or just the organ sound in the background. That's when everything kind of went upside down.
Right.
Yeah, I think the creepiest part of the movie for me was the whole Hail Satan part.
Mm-hmm.
that was freaky.
Now we're going a little far.
Or the scene with the heads.
Oh yeah.
That was Hail Satan?
That was the same scene. Yeah. But just seeing those heads lined up is like, okay, why is she collected the heads?
Right.
The trailer, I think the trailer is very deceiving because they unfortunately used some of the best scenes in the trailer. And it pulled me in, no doubt, but you get the sense that this is a fast-paced movie, and it's not. They show you the boiler room scene. They made me show you that dorm room scene, when she gets possessed. And so, so that was kind of unfortunate, that they did it that way. So I would encourage anybody who wants to see this movie, don't watch the trailer, because you'll go in thinking that it's going to be this super fast-paced movie, and it's a slow burn. I mean, it really unfolds like a novel. You would have thought Oz Perkins, obviously, who's the son of Anthony Perkins, the superstar from those Psycho films. You would have thought that that this movie would move fast based on that trailer, and it's a really slow opening movie, but it builds up beautifully. If you go in it looking at it, it's a thinking person's movie. If you have to think when you watch this movie. If you want to go into this movie wanting to be entertained
or scared,
there's no, you won't jump out of your seat. There's nothing overly disgusting. There's nothing disgusting. But there's gore. But, I mean, I wouldn't call that disgusting, like it was gory.
Squelching noises though.
Right.
But and think about
that was
that
intense.
Happens late at the movie, like that's at the tail end when you about to get up and go.
An hour and 20 minutes in. An hour and 20 minutes in.
So that can't be what this movie's about. It really wasn't about those last few scenes when she goes berserk. So so that's just my take.
Cher, I'm so glad that you mentioned Osgood Perkins, because when I saw that, I was like, ah! It's like, I feel like Psycho was a slow burn though too. Like it wasn't fast paced, so he kind of pulled from that same tension that we got from Psycho in a sense. That you're not 100% sure. You're unsettled, but you don't know what's going to come next. That being said, um, one one of the moments that was really kind of unsettling for me was after the boiler room, and Rose and Catherine are talking, and at one point, Catherine says, I don't, I'm probably going to get these switched up, but the first thing that she says is, "You smell pretty." And that made me completely uncomfortable, because you can see almost a switch in her face and her eyes. So you know that something's not quite right there.
Right.
And then the next line, or a line that's very close to it, is, "You had your chance."
That's right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I was just like,
So Rose was like, "What?"
Right.
I'm sorry,
and then
what?
she barricades herself.
And that line about "you smell pretty," that came right after she said, "My parents are dead." When she
Right.
broke
Oh,
down, she said, "My
yeah.
parents are dead."
Right.
And then she's like, "Oh, you smell pretty." It's like, okay, yeah, it's time to pack up.
It's time
Right.
to leave.
Something is
We
clearly wrong here.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
she
that's-
should have
that's
left.
when you should have locked the door.
She should have left when they were saying the prayer with the nuns.
Yeah.
After she couldn't get those prayers out, and just
Yeah, that was very telling.
that was disgusting.
I think
But it
the
was very
most,
telling. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think the most
Yeah, I guess that
disturbing
was one
part.
disgusting part. My bad.
You're fine. I think the most disturbing part for me was when they were seated in that cafe, her and Bill, I think is his name, the father,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he shows her the picture of Rose, which confirms, you know, that she's on the right track. And she goes to the bathroom and she's like stroking her hair and smiling, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
like that's when it all
The
came full
giggle.
circle for me, right? Like she was so giddy
She's like-
about being in the company of this man whose daughter she murdered. I was like,
Wow.
that's when it all came full circle. And I was like, because I was trying to find the connection between Joan and Catherine, because I was just like, there has to be some type of correlation and connection there, because who is Joan? Where did she even come from? Why is she so eager to get to this to the school? So when she did that in the cafe, I was just like, oh my gosh, because this man has been so nice to her, and you know, he's a little creepy. The hotel scene
I didn't know
where
what he
like,
was.
right, when he comes into her room and she's like sitting there in the towel, like that was such good directing, because it makes you think that something is going to happen, like something sinister is about to go down. You're just like, oh my God, please don't hurt Joan. But then when you're in the cafe. Go ahead, Lauren.
Oh no, I wasn't fearing for Joan. I wasn't fearing for Joan at all. Yeah, I thought that was a strange scene. You know, he tries to proselytize. That's such a hard word for me to say. Proselytize. It's an interesting conversation. I don't think it necessarily casts people of religious beliefs in the best light, because he's like, you know, I see God in you, and it's like, well, if you see God in me, then I don't know what you see because I'm the furthest thing from God. So I was like, you know, this is not a good look. But no, and then I thought something, you know, sleazy was going to happen, because she's in this cow, and I'm saying to myself, you know, I was like, no, this is kind of weird. And then fortunately, you know, so I mean, kudos to, you know, Oz, because the movie was super clean. Like, I mean, there was no you know, bad scenes in it, and so that was refreshing.
I think it's interesting that you didn't like that he said he saw God in her, because I think part of the Joan character is she's trying to get the demon back in her life, but he's gone. So him saying "I see God in you" is kind of like very pointed at her. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, she wants that demon still in her life. I feel like that's why she's going through this entire like trip, and at the end she realizes like, no, he's like really gone, and that's why she's so upset, because she's so lonely. She just wants him back in her life. So I think it's interesting that he saw God in her, considering the background.
Wow, Lauren, what were you gonna say?
I just wanted to quickly touch on the nature of Bill being creepy. and the fact that this film is framed from the perspectives of three different people, or we think it's three different people.
Right.
So one is Catherine, one is Rose, and one is Joan. And I was thinking about that actually this morning, that it's from Joan's perspective. And so I think there are pieces of what Bill's saying that she's actually hearing. And I think there are pieces of what Bill's saying that she's creating. If that makes sense. Like, she's like, oh, he said, kind of like, oh, he said this to me, but he may not have actually said those things. This is from Joan's perspective. And since we're in Joan's perspective, we're seeing it her way.
Right. It could have been like a level up from her hearing the distorted voices. Like when people would talk to her and the voices would be distorted, it might be like another hallucination. Like what you're saying is that she's now hearing things that aren't being said, that are not necessarily implied, but that she's hearing that nobody else is really saying. So maybe like her delusions have graduated and now she's coming up and seeing things that aren't actually being said or things that aren't there. So that's a good
because at the end of the day, she's escaped from a mental hospital.
Right.
Like, so it's like she's ripping the armband off, she's running from the police. So it's like she needs some psychological help. I mean, apparently.
Clearly the girl is ill.
So, right. So it would make sense that, she could be hearing something that's not there, or she's hearing these voices in this distorted fashion because she thinks that the devil is still talking to her, even though he's no longer even with her at this point. She's just been so twisted for so long. And it's like she can't really determine reality from fantasy at this point.
How did you all feel about the demon devil that they showed, or the shadow that they used to represent him?
I thought he looked like Cousin It from the Addams Family.
I thought I was watching like
Donnie
Darko or
Cousin
something.
It is the devil, I know.
Right, I thought it was a little bunny with bunny ears.
I thought it was I was like, the devil's a bunny? Like,
but I think maybe their depiction of it speaks to how maybe he didn't seem threatening to the people that he inhabited. Like maybe he looked like an innocent presence, somebody that wasn't necessarily menacing or looked like a demon, but he just looked like a figure. And you could be like, kind of ambiguous. Because, I mean, we know that it's supposed to be the devil, but he isn't red like, he's usually portrayed. He doesn't, have real horns, or he doesn't look like a typical devil. And so I think
he
added
looks like one of those puppets, like those puppets that a whole person can get in.
Yeah.
And
So,
yeah.
Like a Muppet baby devil
or something.
Don't associate with no Muppets. The Muppets are.
You're right.
Muppets are beautiful.
Yeah, it was like something you are not necessarily going to be scared of, but it's something that's going to spark your curiosity.
Right,
in
like
a way.
what is
so it's
that?
Like, let me cling to it a little bit and find out more about it.
Right.
It reminded me of Donnie Darko for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know who Donnie Darko is.
It's a movie.
It's a great movie.
Oh, Cinnamon.
Okay.
That's for you.
I'm not a movie buff. That's why these discussions are just so great for me, because I'm getting to dissect movies with people who actually like film and like get to the core of it, and I just watch just to watch. So you got to help me become a more robust film watcher. So let's get into the themes of the movie. So I think
I'll go.
Okay. So what theme resonated with you the most, Daniel, and why?
Abandonment issues.
Okay.
Like, because I mean, that's just been a very consistent theme throughout the entire movie. Like, she's waiting on her parents. She thinks she's been left. She thinks she's been forgotten. And because she feels alone, she clings to this dark figure. And because she has that dark figure, this toxic relationship she gets involved in as a result of her feeling abandoned by her parents. She's, oh man, abandonment is such a strong theme.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
But it's just like, it really, it seemed like a commentary on people who suffer from abandonment issues and how they find themselves in those toxic relationships that usually end up destroying them in the end if they're not addressed correctly. And the simple fact that we had this whole Stockholm syndrome thing going on towards the end where she was like, oh, I want him back, so far as to kill 2 other people where that she felt would get her back in the good graces of the devil. It's like, and at the end of the day, she's still left alone at the end of the movie.
Right.
So
I feel like jealousy is a strong thing too. Like you have Rose who is staying there longer over the break, kind of because she wants to, and because she's a secret, you know, she's got something going on with her, and she's in this relationship, and you know things look bright for her. But then you have Kat, who is kind of forced to stay there. So I feel like Kat sees that and says, "Hey, you should probably, you know, appreciate what you have before I take all away from you."
And that she did.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I think.
Let's discuss the theme of loss and grief because I
Right.
guys talked about that. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because, you know, Kat loses her mom and her dad, and everybody loses their parents. It's earth shattering. But to lose them tragically is indescribable. And so I think this really shows, you know, the magnitude of you know, such a loss. And so I really tapped into that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bashir. I also thought about the theme of grief and how pretty much grief connected all of them. You know, Kat and Rose being stuck at the school because Kat's mom and dad are dead, and Rose is kind of like, I don't want to say she's grieving over, I don't know what Rose was grieving over, but in the end, the parents were brought to Joan through grief as well. You know, her father said, you know, you remind me of my daughter. I lost my daughter, so I'm kind of clinging on to the idea of her through you. So I feel like if it wasn't for grief being the, you know, the theme, then none of them would have been connected in a way, really.
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking on the theme and also of loneliness or abandonment, one thing that I did want to talk a little bit about was mental health. There is a little bit of, well, there's a lot of it of kind of a negative stigma that you could attach to this film, but I would say kind of like at the deeper core of it, it is what happens when we choose to ignore that somebody who is suffering needs help. And I think one of the reasons why when she says you had your chance was so unsettling for me was also because Rose had an opportunity. She knew what was happening and she had an opportunity to reach out. The principal had an opportunity to reach out. The father in the beginning had an opportunity to reach out because they all see that something is not quite right, and they don't help.
Yes,
And
Lauren.
so when your spirit is broken, when your spirit is weakened, you become more susceptible to getting help in other ways if no one else will do it. And so that's what allowed her or connected her to this. And I won't say it's the devil, I would say more of a demon. It connects you to a demon because you think that this is where you can find your solace. And so I was a little hesitant to bring that up because, again, like I was like, well, there are some negative depictions of it, but I think it's also a call for people to realize that when you see something, reach out and don't be afraid of it either. Because I think that's the other thing is that you see that everybody's kind of like, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. And they're terrified of it. Don't be afraid of it.
Ooh, Lauren,
Great
point. Per
point.
usual.
That was deep.
Great point.
Always.
Because like you said, I think that everybody, most of the adults in her life knew that something was a bit off, that something was wrong. You know, even with her conversation with the father, he was really nonchalant about it, about not making her performance. And he's like picking up on little nuances of her, you know, maybe wanting to say more or express her feelings, and he just ignores it. Like he doesn't necessarily encourage her to speak up. He's kind of like, well, this is the way it is, you know, it's vacation and I gotta go. And so she's left to deal with those feelings of abandonment again. And it's like she's grieving the loss of everybody that she wants to be around her. And it's like nobody is sticking around for this girl.
That's right.
Even after the father interacted with her the last time, you know, with the exorcism, I felt like he was there only to do his job, but not to sincerely care about her.
Right.
Just sends her away right after that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, next question. What did you all like the least about the film?
Lack of diversity.
Yeah.
A movie of this caliber, I mean, this is a phenomenal film, and to not cast any, you know, major part or supporting role to somebody of color, you know, it was just kind of disappointing. I mean, you know, Rose could have been a person of color. The family, Bill and Linda could have been people of color. So, you know, when you see these great films and you don't see us, then it's kind of, you know, it's disappointing, you know, because there's enough roles to go around. And so it would have been nice if Oz would have tapped somebody, you know, for one of those really nice supporting roles.
It kind of narrows it down and takes away the relatability in a way. I think one of the things I like the least. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
I was just gonna say I think one of the things I like the least about the film was probably, I don't know, like in the beginning, like everybody said they were confused, like they would switch scenes and go like Joan, Kat, or Rose, but then it was like I could have benefited from some date stamps too, just to kind of drive home the fact that we were having flashbacks and kind of jumping back and forth in time a little bit. I think that would have helped me keep up a little better.
Yeah, I also didn't necessarily appreciate the whole non-linear narrative thing because, like Daniel said, I don't think they did a good job with cueing us to let us know that these were two different time frames. But I think that also goes into being able to actually concentrate on the movie, because if you sit down and watch it and you like notice all of the little scenes and the different I guess the nuances of the actor, like how some of Kat's and Joan's the way that they move and like their little expressions are kind of alike. So like things like that, I feel like you could pick up on once you really sat down and watched the movie. So once I finished it, once I was a little halfway through it, I didn't mind the narrative being so all over the place. But I will say that it wasn't my favorite thing to do.
I think it was really confusing because they like, yes, we know that that Joan is Kat, but at the same time, it's like you name these. They have two different names, so it's like it's just even more confusing. And I know on the flip side, it's just to drive home the point that at the end you're supposed to be really tripped out and really like, oh, have like a light bulb moment. But I feel like it could have been done a little cleaner.
Right.
Yeah, there was no light bulb moment for me because you know, this movie, I like to say this movie was a foot short, and the reason why I say that, I use this word foot as a double entendre. Because if you think back to this phenomenal movie called The Usual Suspects, and in this movie at the end, Kaiser Soze's crooked foot straightens up. And when you see that, you realize, okay, that's what happened. That's what just occurred. And that light bulb goes off and you're like, whoa. And there's no whoa moment at the end of this movie. There's no, for me, I didn't realize that Joan was Kat. I didn't realize that. So there was no straightening of the foot scene where it all came to light, and I was like, that was brilliant. And maybe it's because, horror is not my genre. And so, like I said, I didn't go in it. I was going in it thinking, you know, it's going to be a lot of jumping scenes and discussing stuff, and it wasn't. It was a very mental, you know, type of movie, and so yeah, I think it was a foot short.
I feel like they kind of the genre. I feel like it was less horror and more like a thought-provoking thriller because you have so many questions while you're watching it, and they do end up answering all those questions for me. Like once I watched it to the end, I was like, okay, I got it, and it made me want to watch it again to really pay attention. But yeah, I think it's more of like a psychological thriller because it makes you, you know, think a lot about the characters and the situations that they're in, and also like trying to figure out the connection between the three of them as well.
Yeah, I'm with Bashir on that one. It took me a long time to realize that Joan and Kat were the same person. I honestly thought that Joan had ran away from the school and then was somehow returning to the school.
Right.
And then the demon left Kat and possessed Joan. That's what I saw. That's how the timeline looked to me.
That's definitely how it comes across.
I thought he jumped into another body too.
That's definitely how it comes across.
And they also further confuse you by having the sheriff shoot Kat in the boiler room. So it's like you think that she's dead, so there's no way that she could be Joan. And then a few scenes later, she's in the hospital. Then you're just like, I see what.
But do you know? You see her bullet in the.
Yeah, I was gonna say she had a bullet.
You see her bullet. In the hotel room.
Oh, I didn't even.
Yeah.
I didn't even see that. Like I saw the scar, but I was just like, okay, it's just a regular scar.
Yeah. Like there are really slight clues and nods to the fact that they are the same person. Because like Rachel was saying, she does have a bullet wound, and I kind of noticed like. I watched the movie. I was like, they kind of look similar. I wonder if they're like sisters, or I wonder if they're. And at the end, I was like, they're the same. They have the same haircut,
and the same mannerisms. The same mannerisms as well.
Yeah, they had that same silent, menacing look at in certain scenes. It was, and it was like there was a parallelism. Like as Joan was getting closer to the school in the car, you see Kat wilding out a little bit more, almost like they're having a meeting up with that. That demonic experience or that psychological break experience once again. So I feel like then at the end I was like, I got you.
I'm sorry, Daniel. I was
go ahead.
I chalk up the fact that the clues weren't very clear. I chalk that up to the fact that this was Oz Perkins' directorial debut, and so I cut him some slack for that. And then, so doing some digging, I realized that this guy actually has a Netflix film called, what is this movie called? I Am the Pretty That Lives in the House.
I want to watch that now.
Yeah, and so I have a feeling that because it was bought by Netflix, that it's going to be quite a film. I think it's going to be, you know, head and shoulders, possibly above this directorial debut that he did.
Lauren, was there anything you liked, you didn't necessarily dislike, but you didn't appreciate about the film that they did?
I think on initial watch, it was that I couldn't figure out what year this was taking place. So similarly to how you guys didn't really appreciate the time jump, I was like, I can't figure out the year. So initially in the first few frames, I thought that we were in the 70s. And then I noticed there was had a boombox. And so I was like, maybe the late 80s, early 90s. And of course, then you get the payphone, which kind of went away in the 90s as well. And so I think that was something that kind of put me off a little bit, but not so much that it made me dislike the film. It's really not central to the plot as a whole. It's something, for some reason, me personally, I thought I needed to pinpoint. But it also kind of reminds me of the distortion of setting that came with It Follows. If any of you guys have seen
Yes, It Follows.
And I think, so I thought that maybe it was very intentional in how it was presented in its time present, because you get a mix of the past, the present, and the far off future. And I think we kind of get a little bit of that here, the past, the present. and now what is to come.
Right. Okay. So we've all talked about what we didn't appreciate about the film. So what did we love? What did the film do well that we were like absolutely like round of applause, good job? What did we like about the film?
Music.
Yeah, music,
Yeah, the music
Kat's
was great.
facial expressions, her stale look of just staring into the distance.
Kieran Shipka has got some talent.
Yeah.
And yay for everybody liking the music. It's actually Osgood Perkins' brother.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh wow.
And he wrote the creepy song too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I did check for Eagle to see if it was there.
Is it?
It's not.
Okay. But this was
First
the
one.
first one, right?
Yeah.
I was so sad. I did order a few tracks from Amazon. My favorite one actually was Rose's theme, which plays when Rose comes in. I just thought it was so haunting. It's got this beautiful dissonance, and it has like a almost sinister quality underneath it, just like the film did. So I thought that was a standout track for me.
I also liked the music, and also I feel like the cinematography and all the A24 films I've watched, like the cinematography is amazing. Like I don't know what their cinematography budget is, but whatever they're doing, they need to keep it up because it just looks it makes you feel all of the feeling that you're watching the movie more intense. Like if you're feeling scared, they're not gonna make anything lighter. The sun isn't gonna come out. There's not gonna be any like open windows. Everything is gonna be dark and grainy and just really spooky looking.
They're gonna lean into it.
Right. And I think that them doing that and not allowing the viewers to get any real break and feeling that way, they do an awesome job, and that kind of keeps you engaged in the cinematography, basically. Yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
I thought the acting was phenomenal. I thought these young ladies did a phenomenal job. Kat and Joan had very few words to say, but they scared the daylights out of you. You know, so I thought the acting was splendid.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job of depicting just the grief, like, and I guess that's a nod towards the actor ability because they really pull you into that emotion of the loss and the grief and the feeling of abandonment that they're feeling. It's like, especially that end scene when she touches the furnace and it's ice cold, and then she's just outside sobbing because she knows that she's cut off or disconnected from this figure that she clung to so deeply. I was really pulled into it.
Okay, so we discussed theme, the setting, we talked about music, and also the acting choices. Do you guys have any like last comments or lingering questions that you had about the film that maybe the film did not answer?
I would just say if anybody is a fan of The Exorcist, you got to watch this movie because what Osgood Perkins does, he brings this very creepy, terrifying story to life in a way that it's not, it's not overly supernatural. It feels very real.
Right.
And especially, the haunting scenes at the end. I mean, it looked very realistic, and that's what really made it terrifying. So if you're a fan of The Exorcist, you have to see this film.
And I would say for those who enjoyed Hereditary, this would be good for them as well.
They were
This is a
produced
tamer
by the
Hereditary.
same film company. They're both produced by
Hereditary was great.
A24. Hereditary was great.
Yeah, but I think it still kind of touches on those themes of grief and loss, and also kind of what happens when our spirits are broken.
I guess my final comment was the story that Rose told Kat about the sisters being bald and then wearing wigs. I was like really
So
looking for that
random.
in the next scene. Yeah, I was like, was that the
Me too. I was
catalyst?
looking hard.
Yeah, I was like, was that the catalyst for the demonic possession? Because right after that, Kat started acting weird or weirder, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that something was happening with her. So I feel like, was that the catalyst for her, you know, welcoming this demonic possession? You know, why did Rose make that comment? It was just so random. And I was just like, were they bald? Do they have eyebrows? And then the next scene, I was like, Rose, why did you say that? Because that's not true. They clearly have hair on their bodies. Like, random.
My thing is, did they ever explain or tell us when Kat's parents actually died?
At
No.
the beginning? Oh no, that was just a premonition.
But how long ago before, you know, she found out? How long was she in that school knowing
Right.
that her parents weren't coming?
I
I don't
remember
think they ever
seeing a
brought that back
car.
around.
Yeah, I think they're on their way. I think
Yeah,
they're on their way.
was the car like totaled or something?
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah,
looked
it
like
was.
It was charred. Yeah, so I think they were on their way to pick her up. Maybe they were coming from really far away. And
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, but like you said, like I thought they were saying that was like a premonition. So it was like
Right.
she never really got a phone call, or nobody ever really told her that her
Right.
parents had been in an accident or that they were dead. So it was like,
Well, she did
okay.
from the demons.
Yeah, the,
Yeah.
the rabbit monster.
The rabbit.
But because it didn't like follow a like chronological order, we don't even know when it
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
So that was all kind of confusing. There was another scene where there was a shot of someone's feet in the bathtub. Do you guys know what that was about? Because it happened twice, and I was just like thinking, what is the significance of this? Because we don't know
I thought it
whose
was just
feet it
Kat.
is.
I think
Yeah.
it's Kat's feet, and I think it was the past versus the present.
Okay.
Okay, there's another scene up when she's staring down at the spoon when they're setting the table at the nun's house. And she's so I had to, I had to rewind that to say, what is she looking at? I didn't see nothing. What is this? He's just looking at the silverware. I'm like, what's
It
going
was
on?
crooked.
More confused.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
crooked.
The
What
spoon
happened?
was
It was
the
crooked.
spoon was
Crooked?
crooked. And
Like
so
the
she
foot
takes
in,
it and
in
she
Kaiser
puts it.
Sose's Usual Suspects. There's the
To
foot.
tie it.
I was looking for the
Right.
foot. Couldn't. So the
It
spoon was the
right
foot.
there.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
There.
The spoon was the foot. Thank you.
So would you all recommend this film? And if so, who would you recommend it to?
I recommended it to all of you.
Yes, she did. Good job with the pick, Lauren. You did a good
Yeah,
job with this one. I
Lauren.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I would
think I know.
personally.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I know some of you said it. You didn't think it was a horror film, but I do think it was a horror film. I would recommend it to fans of horror, and I think it was perfect for October too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
good
pick.
October film.
Yeah, if I had to categorize it, I would probably categorize it as like a psychological horror film.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't as supernatural as I thought it was going to be. So anybody who likes horror, anybody who likes thrillers,
Yeah, or
I
putting
would
pieces
recommend it to
together.
them.
Right.
Yeah, I would even maybe even recommend it to people who like mysteries
Yeah. That's true.
because it had a mystery quality to it.
You sure do.
Right. I would recommend this to people who can appreciate a slow burn film because I think that this is kind of slower than slow a little. Like you really have to stick with it, and I promise you it'll pay off. Also, if you appreciate like thought-provoking films, like I said, I think that this film did a really good job of providing all of these questions, but also answering them because you don't feel like you're left really confused at the end. You're like, okay, well, that was a nice little ending with a bow on it. You know, you still think about things that happened before in the film, but I think that they did a really good job of like wrapping up everything and encouraging you to think deeper about, you know, than what just the plot presented. And it wasn't like an in-your-face gory horror. Like there wasn't a lot of blood. Rachel commented on the whole squelching sound. That was pretty intense because when she was doing it, I don't think there was any music playing. You just had there was no comfort of any type of background music or vocals. It was just literally her. So that was kind of creepy. But it wasn't like too gory or too like, I don't know, too bloody. It wasn't super bloody. There was blood, but if you're a fan of like the not so gory psychological horror films and the slow burn movies, then I would definitely suggest that you check this out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our discussion. As always, I really appreciate you guys for joining me, and for the audience at home, thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope that you watch the film and you like it as much as we did, and you can also discuss it amongst other people in your circle as well. Thank you. Until next time. Bye.
Thanks, Cinnamon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.